All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Downey from Automaster Systems. Been in the DMS space for 21 years. Had a little hiatus. Worked at a buy here, pay here car lot. Used a couple different DMSs, and obviously I'm with Automaster now. So give a lot of feedback on that and experience. I know Jeff as well has had some experience in that as well. But we're going to go through how to choose the right DMS.
As Mike said, my name's Jeff McCurry. I'm the VP of Product for Dealer Socket. I handle the DMS and the inventory product for that company. Prior to that, I was the founder of DealTrace, which was the first online internet-based DMS platform. And spent a little stint with my family. I've been in the buy here, pay here business since the early 80s, so kind of made my runs through the DMS indie world as part of Indie and buy here, pay here. They still operate 2 locations in the Dallas area. We're going to start a format today, and we're going to give you some highlights, really. These are about 6 general things to look for, rules, not necessarily rules, but guidelines as you're choosing a DMS. Both of us are going to be pretty agnostic to our own particular products, so if you're interested in talking about our products, please visit us. We have people in the room after this particular meeting, or if you want to come by the booth, more than happy to talk with you about our particular products and how we address some of these issues we're going to point out today. But as we cover these slides, we're not going to stop on each slide and try to answer a lot of questions here. So if you would, these are meant to generate questions from you, and we hope to get through them fairly quickly so that we can leave a lot of time more of a Q&A at that point. So you can ask questions that you want. So jot those questions down as we go through the slides, and we'll make sure and address them at the very end, okay? Starting out, just as a basis, I want to talk a little bit about general requirements and things to look for in a DMS. And in the DMS world today, you're going to find a variety of products. There's quite a few products in the indie space. And when you go out and look, you need to understand the different ways that technology is delivered today. Now, this was a topic that no one really ever heard of, but by now you've heard of what SaaS and cloud-based technologies are. Desktop and server-based technologies. There are advantages and disadvantages of both. And so as you go out and you start looking at these products, understand what the advantages are. We live in a world now with most of us, I'm sure every one of you got a phone, and you're probably on it the majority of the time. In fact, see, I'm getting a call right in the middle of the meeting. So you're probably on it the majority of the time. You probably conduct a majority of your business on your phone half the time. So when you're looking at technologies, that may be a question that you want to ask. Can I access my DMS, my information? Can I do a lot of the functionality from an iPad or a tablet or from my phone or at my desktop? Or how does it connect? Other things you want to ask is, do I have to have equipment? Do I install servers? Am I responsible for keeping it updated? Do you connect into my system? Is that how it gets updated, or is it something that happens overnight? These are things you want to know. Also, as you're looking, remember that as we progress forward, a lot of us are hiring millennials now. Millennials work differently. If everybody hasn't recognized by now, that's a different world. It's a now type world. We want things now. We want to do things on our mobile device. We want modern technologies. So that's another thing you might want to consider. How easy is it going to be to train somebody on this? How well will they adapt to it? Look for that sort of technology as you go forward. Good questions to always ask. Lastly, on the cloud-based and equipment, you want to look at what devices this is available on. Besides the phone, it could be, do you use Mac? Do you use PC? Is that a predominant? That's a question you want to ask as well. A lot of times, what we found is as we went through development life, we found more and more people adopting Macs, and they wanted to be able to use a Macintosh rather than have to be on a PC. So another good question to ask, hey, can I use this software if I'm running a Mac? Okay? Lastly, you want to make sure that it's scalable. Your DMS is your core technology. So when you do this, and you'll hear me use this word quite a bit, called the long game. What do you really want to achieve? Where you're headed, and if you're going to make a change, I will tell you the number one challenge for a dealer in a DMS, whether they have one or they're getting ready to go to one, is change. So if you're really setting out to excel, and I'm hoping we're all entrepreneurs. We didn't get into the business and say, man, I want to be just okay. I want to be really great at what I do, right? So if you're really taking out and you want to be great at what you do, don't just go out and say, I want the cheapest thing on the market. Look at, does this get me where I want to go in the future? I always like to use the analogy of I'm going on a hike and I want to summit this mountain. Well, if I truly want to reach the top, and I intend on doing that, I don't go to get to the bottom without the right equipment to scale up and then say, hey, I'm going to get there. Now it's time. Let me go back and get the rest of it. Because the hardest thing you're going to do at that time, especially when you've gotten bigger and you're good at it, is to change. You got to retrain everybody, and trust me, it's a tough thing to do. Okay? Anything to add to that, Mike? Joe? Go ahead and turn this over.
Yep. No, I think just the last comment there about the conversion and data conversion. You know, the change is just how you learn the new software, but it's also, if you're coming from another software and switching, is what happens to that data, right? And from your old system to your new system. So that's a big thing to definitely ask your software providers to go through those pieces. So the next topic that we're going to cover is compliance side. Obviously, there's conferences just for compliance, so this is definitely a high overview. The big things to really convert and talk about are the compliance pieces. Are specifically, your DMS is going to touch lots of different departments within your dealership, right? Some people have a service module, some people don't. Some people have collections, some people don't. So compliance is a very broad brush, but it's a game changer, right? If you're not looking at compliance, you don't have a compliance officer, make sure that you assign that and get that task done before the end of the show. The other big piece with compliance is there's state laws, there's federal laws, and I also, it's not on the slide here, but it's also, if you guys have a credit line, if you're in buy here, pay here, there's compliance with your lender, right? And so those are big things, all three of those things. There's a myriad of different pieces. We put a couple up there, and I think the big one, I think, Jeff, what we talked about was the documents and the compliance on the contracts, and if you're printing out the right documents on your actual deal closure. Okay? But also on the document side, there's also repos. Again, if you're in buy here, pay here, you have documents for your repos, your letters to your customers, late fee disclosures, ACH recurring. All those things come into mind, right? So those are just some things, again, to spawn that question. How does my software help me achieve that? Am I literally typing in a Word document and it's not even in my software? Or is it generating the letter? Is it automatically emailing, automatically texting my customers? Those types of things. So those are all things to look at. And then you've got the myriad of all the acronyms, right? 8300, no facts and red flags and SDN, and there's 100 of those, PCI, etc. I'm not going to go through every one, but again, you need to know where that hits in your part of your dealership and how the software is going to help you, where the software is not going to make you compliant. Okay? It's going to help you in your compliance, but it's not going to make you compliant. So that's a very important thing. A lot of our customers come up to us and, how do I get compliant? Well, there's half on my end, half on your end, right? So that's a big piece to really drill down into there. Third topic here is training, support, and updates. Biggest thing is looking at, after you sign the contract, after you've gone through the demos, after you picked your software that you're going with, is what is after the fact, right? You had the marriage, now how's it, or had the wedding, now how's it going to be going through? So the biggest thing there is, what is the training piece is going to be? So is that online? Is it on site? Is it reading a manual? Is it an hour webinar? What are those training pieces? Okay. The other big thing I always tell people is pick a lead at your dealership of who's going to be responsible for that software conversion and that DMS. If you have 7 people and they're all butting heads of what to do, you're going to have a failed software conversion. You need to pick a lead, whether that's an owner, whether it's an office manager, whether it's a controller, and make sure that everything funnels through that person. It makes it easier on the company, and it makes it easier on the software vendor. Okay? The other thing is, who is the software, who's behind the software, right? We all look at the bells and whistles, we look at the software, but who's the company behind that? So have they been in the industry? Are they here at the show? Are they part of state associations? All those types of things. And then support. So support obviously is a big one. Even if the software 100% of the time up, no problems, you're still going to call in and ask, how do I do this? Right? You got new software. Maybe it's a new thing. Maybe you started doing CPI. Maybe you added a new lender. You're going to call them for support. Right? So the biggest thing is find out how they do support. Is it phone call? Is it email? Is it web? Is it chat? There's all those different channels. It's probably all the above. And then also, what are the hours? Right? If you got a software company's on the East Coast and your dealership's on the West Coast, 3-hour time change. If it's 5:30 Eastern, that's 2:30 West Coast time. What's going to happen there? What's my emergency support? Right? So those are things that you got to look at. And then last are the upgrades. So I know Jeff touched a little bit on SaaS and client server. What are the upgrades? How often are they? Do I have to have everyone in my dealership out of the software while we do the upgrade if it's locally hosted versus on the SaaS? Can it be done after hours? If you've got 6 rooftops, 80 people, you probably don't want to have your software down on a Saturday for someone to upgrade your system, right? You want to do that after hours. SaaS, there's obviously, again, advantages. I know both of us do SaaS as well, so we do it after hours. Usually, 12 to 3, 12 to 4? Yeah, in that ballpark. You still have people in the software at that time, by the way. But the biggest thing is asking those questions. Those are things that normally don't come out on that initial conversation with the software and the DMS provider. Jeff, you got anything to add on that?
Perfect. Definitely, when the 2 topics that Mike just covered, the importance. One thing about compliance that I would mention is that probably represents the largest risk to your dealership, period. So you need to be well aware of it. As Mike said, make sure you have a compliance officer. There is no software that can guarantee you're compliant. It can just help provide you the tools, and it can help you control it. That's pretty much it. So make sure you have somebody appointed to do that. So jumping to features. Now this is really brief. There are tons of features available in software today. Okay? The thing that you need to understand is, and when you're talking to a vendor, understand what you want to be and what you are today. And you heard me say it earlier, don't just plan for today. Don't buy what you are today. Buy what you want to be. Okay? So when you look at features, are you a retail dealer? Do you do retail paper? And what I mean by that, are you using local lenders? Do you connect to other lenders? Do you electronically want to send to them? Do you use a Route 1 or a dealer track connection along the way? Do you do wholesale? Do you do buy here, pay here? Do you do some blended model? And I'll tell you, we're seeing dealers move to blended models. With the tightening of capital out there, it's hard to get enough capital to run your entire dealership. It's kind of funny to listen to a dealer say, hey, I'm kind of trying not to sell as many cars now. Why? But running out of my credit line, I need to kind of taper it down just a little bit until I collect some more money, and then we'll work along the line. So what we see happening in the industry today, we see this blended model occurring. Some of the deals are going outside. Maybe the heavier deals are the deals that just doesn't quite fit your profile as much, and you can get done outside. They're putting them outside, and then they're building their portfolio off of that. So keep that in mind as you look at a software. Now, there's the basics in every software. So when you look at all the software, you're going to find the basics. There's going to be inventory management. There's going to be sales. There's going to be, if it's buy here, pay here, there's going to be notes receivable. Okay? You're going to find that there's going to be a reporting solution or an analytics solution. As you dive deeper into each of these, it's important to understand the features that are involved, like in inventory itself. Look at what the capabilities are that you do. Do you want to integrate with other inventory platforms? Once again, in our industry, we see inventory as the squeeze on the buy here, pay here dealer, on the indie dealer in particular, because the margin compression is occurring in the franchise dealers at the new car level. Not as many cars are coming down to us, so we're all hunting for the same car out there in the market. So we're seeing these tools become more sophisticated to help you identify the right inventory. So look for that. It's important that you recognize your challenges and make sure this solution overcomes those challenges. When you're looking at the sales side of it, once again, if you're a blended model, you want to look for a software that's going to help empower you on the retail side. So make sure that you can send to lenders, that you get that connectivity, that you can produce different contracts for different lenders, different dot packages. Can you do all the requirements and workflows that are required for that? There's credit involved, right? I got to pull credit. I've got to go through some of the compliance things that Mike was referring to. When you look at compliance, it touches everything you do, all throughout. Okay? As you go into notes receivable, it's going to introduce additional things that you need to be aware of. So as we go through these basics, look for all that. And then certainly accounting. Accounting is going to constantly come up as a question for you. You're going to see solutions that have an accounting package in it. And then you're going to see, more often than not, you're going to see integration to an accounting package. Integrations to accounting packages, typically you're going to see some of the commons out there are going to be Sage products or Intuit products. They're probably the most common product that you see in the market, most sophisticated in the market. So you'll see a lot of connectivity that's pretty common. Doesn't mean I'm not representing that's what you want to do. I'm saying that's what you're going to see. So ask your accountant how they want to work and what features are required for them to do accounting, and then look for that flexibility to do what you want to do. Okay? Good questions to always ask. Lastly, I would say that data is extremely important. You're going to find that the data is going to represent how you drive your strategy in the future. And the ability to capture the right data in the right way and get to it in a good reporting format or a business analytics format or a BI tool, or export it or FTP it or schedule it or whatever you want to do, all those things are going to become critical to your operation. It's going to help you make good decisions going forward. It's also going to help you when it comes time for capital. What's the number one thing that a lender wants? He wants the return of their capital. Yeah, they want return on the capital, but they would rather have return of it first. They want to make sure they can get it back. And to do that, they want to know that you can control your business. So that's going to become very important to you. You're also going to run into things such as security. How do I control users? Okay, so ask those questions. How do I set up users in your system? Can I regulate what they do? Can I keep them from doing certain things? Can I keep a salesperson from taking a payment or getting to an account? Can I restrict the appropriate information? Once again, all good questions to ask as you go through this. And then lastly, my favorite is, and it's probably the biggest feature if you want to jump to the next slide, is integrations. I said before that the DMS is the core to your business. And because it's core to your business, it becomes what we like to call the enabler. Okay? It's going to enable you to use best-of-breed tools in the market. And there's a lot of them. DMS functionality, in some cases, especially where it makes sense, you'll see the DMS, and we all do it. Mike does a good job of this as well. We all do this. We'll build in technology that makes sense for the DMS and for the dealer where it makes sense. But we can't build everything. Sometimes you want somebody focused on that. That's sometimes where I come back to the Intuits of the world. Sometimes you want somebody that their entire business model is nothing but to make the best tool in that market. You're going to see it in a variety of areas. GPS units. Tons of them out there. Our goal as a DMS is not to produce them. It's to enable you to use them in the best way possible. Yeah, try to hold it to the very end. I'm sorry, I definitely want to answer it. We've got one more, and then we're going to jump straight to it. So hold that thought. It's going to be a good one. So that's the other thing. As you go through some of these up here, I'm not going to read them all off. By the way, the slide is available in your phone. But when you look at this, depending what you do at your dealership, you're going to see an integration everywhere. You heard me mention inventory. In your inventory component, do you do syndication? Do you do pricing and merchandising? Do you need to have tools that help you acquire vehicles, download from the auto auctions? These are all integrations that you might see. In the sales, are you getting your credit bureaus, as we talked about? Are you getting all your compliance tools integrated? Do you have an electronic filing cabinet, perhaps, where you're storing the documents? How about your documents? Your documents are another one. You brought this up as a compliance topic. Communications, you're going to see touches every aspect of your DMS as well. You're going to see it touch in the deal side, when you're working leads, when you're sending information back and forth to the customer. Sometimes we're even seeing e-contracting now where we're sending the forms back out to them to take a look at before they come in. Okay, So you're going to see communications there. You're going to see texting, email, IVR. These are all things that are going to touch throughout, especially in the collection side as well. So look for that. Ask those questions. How do I do those things? Can I do them with your software? There are things up here that, while you see this whole list, we don't know about today. A lot of these didn't exist 5 years ago. So the point being is look for a software that's going to enable you not only now, but later. We see that APIs are a big deal today. I know you guys do this as well. APIs have become a way of enabling users to build technology beyond what we can even build. Actually, to me, that's one of the exciting things, is to see your software that you produce take on a whole new life. You go out to some dealership, you visit with them, and you look down and they're doing something you never even thought about because you enabled it through an API. So look for that. Can I do those? Can I actually do that? And then you heard me mentioning portfolio analytics. You can't stress it enough. A lot of great tools out here. We've heard subprime analytics. Yes, Ken Shilson's deal, being able to analyze that data, make good decisions, and derive your future strategy, absolutely critical. Anything to add to that?
I think getting back to integrations, that kind of ties into here is, integrations thrown around a lot in pretty much every industry, but specifically with the DMS, is what actually that integration does, right? Is it one way? Is it two-way? Does it talk back and forth between the two companies and the two softwares? So make sure you ask those questions when you're talking about integrations. It might be just a website link, right, that does a username and password and that's it. Or it might actually pass data back and forth. So those are big things to look at. And then it gets into the cost, right? Obviously a big topic, and software varies from a cost standpoint, just like cars vary from a cost standpoint. And so these are kind of the big topics I wanted to highlight here. Startup and monthly cost, right? That goes back to multiple things that we talked about. So training, support, conversion, all those pieces are part of that support, that setup fee. And then the ongoing monthly. Is there a license fee? Is it per user? Is it per rooftop? Is it per company? Is it all the above? So you need to definitely ask your software company those types of questions of where those prices are coming in from. Obviously, some things that, depending on how the software is set up, is hardware, right? We talked to SaaS and Macintosh and Windows. Does it only run on Windows servers versus Windows workstations? So do you have to get a server that's sitting in another box in a closet somewhere, and then all your clients have desktops, right? The other big thing is additional personnel, and I put that in there because if you are hosting your own, who's going to be the person that's actually supporting that if that computer dies, right? The software company is not going to install a new printer or put a new hard drive or new RAM in it. They're going to wait for all that to be done to install their software, okay? So who's doing that? Is that third party? Is that in-house? Is it the owner's son? Those types of things. Training, support, and upgrades, again, we covered that. Additional software required, those are big things. We talked about integrations, payment processors. What other pieces of software do they require to do the integration with your DMS, right? If it's a payment processor, do they require you to buy hardware swipes? Those types of things. And then, again, what is the true cost of the DMS? So we go back to how is the software going to make it to where you're gaining efficiencies in your dealership and your operation? When we started, it was all cash payments. There was no credit cards, no ACH, right? Had cashier windows. It looked like the airport. You had 13 payment windows across the dealership. And now, I don't even have a cashier at a lot of my dealerships. They're set up on recurring. They pay different integration partners with the payment processors. They go on the web and pay them. So those are all things to think about in efficiencies and cost savings, not just truly how much the software costs you, but what are you saving so you can do more things in your dealership where the software does those mundane things every day. The potential losses and exposure due to lack of controls, I think that ties back to security. Again, if your software is not tracking what the changes were, of who changed the contractual due date, or who deleted out a car or edited a car, all those things go back to lack of controls. Okay, And then expansion, again, you touched on that. What does that cost if you've got one lot and you want to grow to 3 lots? Is the software going to charge you, again, per user, per rooftop, et cetera? So you got to plan for that of what you're looking for in that true cost side. And I think we're ready for Q&A. Do you have anything to add on that?
What's that?
You have anything to add on the true cost?
I think that's great. One of the things when you look at this, the additional software and some of the costs on that, recognize that the other thing that the industry is trying to push for is configurability. If you don't use something, you certainly don't want it sitting there in front of you all day long. It becomes more of a nuisance. And so we see this desire to configure not only for the company but down to the user level of what a user does. So look for configurability, and can you configure the system in the way that you use it and the way that you actually do your processes. The big point there with cost is there's a lot to it. It's not simply price. We see a lot of training, and we see a lot of turnover at dealerships, and that in itself is a pretty big cost. So open it up, and you had a question right off the bat, so I apologize. That's a great question. So let me see if I can answer it, and then I'll turn that one over. Fair enough. So typically, when you look at a DMS, you're typically going to find that the API, and I can't speak for everybody, when typically you develop APIs, they're going to be open, and it's usually what the software uses itself. If it's done in a great way, the API is the same thing that the software was built on in the first place. So when you look at the software, and using it, it's actually using a layer underneath for the API, and they typically have abilities to expose various levels of that. Sometimes we see only parts of it being exposed. And what we're talking about here is where the software doesn't do it something exactly the way you want. You'd like to do it. It becomes a business equation for the DMS, whether or not it makes sense. Can they make the investment to do it? But it still might be valuable to you, and you could actually hire somebody to develop that piece for yourself and have it. If the software does that, you'll see this in the technology world today. Most everybody's driving towards an API. Does that kind of answer it? But it's not complete open source. Most DMSs are going to go through what they call a DCP or certified program of some sort. A lot of them offer it as an add-on piece for a dealer, so if it's a one-off. But a lot of times our partners, we'll see partners come to all of us. It's probably the same for you. And they'll ask to say, hey, we would like to do it for a multitude of dealers, and then we'll work with them through an API. And sometimes that expense doesn't get passed to you. It is actually something that they'll take care of. So it just varies. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I just think that, because DMS is so big, there's a lot of specifics to that, obviously. But, most of the time, and again, in the DMS world, we have partners that come to us, whether it's a payment processor, a GPS company, et cetera, and say, hey, we want to integrate. And that's where that communication starts to go through that piece. So, another question? Application programming interface. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great point. We see the compliance officer as a role, not a position. Bingo.
Yeah. Yes, correct.
Fantastic question. I don't even need a mic.
Yeah, go ahead. Here. Either way.
Can everybody hear me okay? What's that? Yeah, the question was, does every dealership actually need a person that is a compliance officer? The answer is it's a role. It doesn't actually have to be somebody different. They can serve other purposes. A lot of times we see it as being an owner. But it's somebody that when you come in, at least what you'll find most of the times when a regulator comes in to do an audit, they will ask for who's going to interface with. You typically want that to be somebody that has the role of compliance officer, somebody that's actually verifying that not only what's written, you do want written documentation of what you do. Again, I'm not giving legal advice here. I'm just saying this is the common this is what we see commonly. You're going to have written documentation of what compliance you follow, and then you're going to want to do demonstrate within your application how you do that. And then they'll ask full certain stuff, and you'll become more of a liaison. But it doesn't have to be an individual person. A lot of times we see it also where there'll be shared role, where they'll work directly with an outside attorney or law firm, such as a Hudson Williams, for example, and they'll say, hey, what do I need to do to be ready? And they'll help provide some of the documentation for that and direction. Great question.
So is the regulator an association? Is it government?
Yeah, it varies. In the U.S., it normally starts at the state level, right? But again, it could be federal level. It could be, if it's an OFAC, the 8300 for IRS, again, that goes into the federal level. So.
We do see a lot of that with data privacy today. We also have privacy notices, right? 8300 is a big deal.
I think for buy here, pay here really is the complaint management side, right? They complain about a credit bureau reporting, they complain about the car breaking down, they go to the Better Business Bureau, those types of things. And that's where we see a lot of that piece. I mean, there's certain states like Texas has got OCCC, New York's the Finance Commission. There's multiple states that have a lot harder on the dealers than other states just because they already have a commission like that at the state level. So again, you have a lot of those different pieces that all kind of come in. Sure. Mm-hmm.
Is there a PI that's higher figure oriented? Because to be honest, I find the DMS that I'm currently using is cumbersome, and I understand it's a proprietary software that's using, and I have to go through it, pull data out, and to be honest, it's just a pain going through multiple reports, multiple source inputs, and pulling 20 reports, which takes forever, and to be honest, I do want to try it first. And that's just going to make it easier. I don't see it out there, but if it is, I'd love to know.
I'll start with that one. So again, without promoting our products because we've been sworn to do that, not do that. But I think from a Power BI, it's all about getting access to your data, right? So if you have an API, if you're on a SaaS product, maybe they have an ODBC connection or something like that to get access to that data. Even if it's locally, maybe they give you access to that database to get real time. Otherwise, you're getting what you're getting, which is dump out CSV files and put it through there.
I don't want to call it out, but I do have one through all.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I have to go through it to use it. And it tells me that for some reports, I've got to use Internet Explorer or Navigate. But then it says that we encourage you to use Google Chrome. So you've got programmers who built this for programmers,
Mm-hmm.
and it's cumbersome for users. And at the end of the day, it's much money being spent. It needs to be catch up. And the BI can take and bypass that. And that's what I'm trying to, get to.
So yeah, I think that all DMSs are driving towards what you're talking about. I think in some stages it's early as far as the comprehensive BI scenario. I think they are driving towards that. That said, we see a lot of dealers who do heavy BI. They don't necessarily do it within the platform. I think it's limited BIs in some of the platforms. And we see that then occurring through more of extractions into kind of a dedicated tool in a lot of cases. So I do think that's where the world is headed. I do think that we're probably all trying to get there and learning how to expose the data source in the right ways with the right tools and make the right decisions. But yeah, so it's a great point, and I think it's at early phases. I haven't seen, and I'm not going to speak for every DMS, and there's others here I would ask that question, but I haven't seen the extraordinary BI tool that's all it does all day long exist yet.
Well, there's BI tools that are out there.
Definitely.
In the end, it's just an SQL. It's pulled out, but I understand also that you guys got to make money. It sounds monetary as far as that structure goes, but at the end of the day, it's just an SQL. I just want to be able to get it without feeling like I
Yeah. BI tools typically access multitudes of data, and as you obviously aware how SQL works, SQL tools accessing multiple tables and multiple structures that are in some cases unrelated to one another require some pretty extensive, and that's where I think the immaturity of the products are right now. Good question, though. Good question. I'll start, and once again, these are the kind of questions we hope to get. So I think that the reason I say that change is so tough, and you nailed it, it's the conversion process is one level of it. The data that is being extracted from the existing system, one, may not be as complete or full as necessary to equate in the new systems. That's sometimes a challenge. Most systems have the capability at this point to do what we would call full transitions. That's transaction history, sales, and notes receivable, charge-offs, closed loans, etc. However, depending on where it's coming from and the amount of data that system typically tracks and how well it can provide that data back into itself may hinder its capability in performing some of those transitions. The other thing in the change is just change. And this is one of the biggest things I see. And I always say it, sometimes if the software you're on is okay, or there are things about it I don't like, or hey, it's great, that whatever the realm you are, sometimes it's just hard to pick up and do something different. And we see that a lot. I usually say once you make a decision, you're going to do it, because let's face it, if you're on something and you are making a change, it is something you're going to go through. That's why you want to make a good decision going forward, make sure you can grow with it. But that change, when you go through it, I'm not going to sit here and candy coat it for anybody. It's a tough deal to do. It is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Missouri originally, so I'm from the Show Me state. So I usually tell the software vendor, and recommend, show me what I'm going to get on conversion, right? And I think one of the other things is also talk to dealers that came from that old software onto the new one and ask that dealer, what did they bring over? Because I think depending on business model, if it's lease here, pay here versus buy here, pay here versus just retail, obviously there's a lot of different pieces that fall into that, right? A lot of times some of the things that I see, I'm sure you see the same as well, is that was their third software conversion before they converted to the newest software conversion. So all the stuff that was done on the first software conversion was fine, but the last two were converted 8, 10, 12 years ago, and it's in the system. And so that block of data is okay, but then the block of data from 12 years before was very lacking, right? So I think there's multiple, facets to that from data conversion, but I think there's a couple good things, and one thing is ask a dealer who's already converted. What did I get? Did I get notes? Did I get payment history? Payment history, was it just the full payment amount, or was it principal, interest, late fees, NSF fees, etc.? So I would go through those pieces with that software vendor that you're looking at. Any other questions? What time is it?
We still got 5 minutes, so we can do this.
Yeah. Yeah, so at a high level, right? So he asked if the software can hold your data, if the software company can withhold your data, right? So again, I think that goes back to who the software company you're working with. Most softwares, I know in my case, I do almost all conversions off of old software. I don't know of anyone that's in the exhibit hall that holds data. We do a lot of conversions to get data, right? To get that. Now, there could be a cost associated with that data file, right? They could have a backup, or they have to write a special program to export the data out for you to do that. Typically, it's a one-time fee. We see sometimes, if a charge at all. But again, those are all things. But I don't think any software company does anyone any favors by holding data, from a DMS level. Just creates hostages, not customers. So, yeah, sure. Good question?
I have a question about how dealers use DMS systems to syndicate feeds to other sources. So the premise of the question is that we use sources problem all the time. I'm just pleased to share about the syndication of DMS stuff into our marketplace, but there's like other marketplaces too.
Sure.
Like for review and points where you can do feed syndication, like how do you create the layer of like this feature exists?
Yeah.
How do you also drive adoption of things that develop your software?
So I think from the inventory sourcing, I'm a big believer, I know you are too, about the data starts in the DMS and then goes out. Obviously different softwares do different things, but I think it's where that dealer is putting, for instance, their pictures, right? Just start there. If they're not putting it in the DMS, they don't want it to go to Facebook without pictures. So they're going to rely on the website to then syndicate it up, to Facebook or wherever it may go. So I think, the dealer has to ask himself, where am I going to put that information in to start with? And then how is the software going to get that up? Is it API? Is it FTP? Is it a, CSV file once a night? And it's also how often, right? So I think those are all pieces that really you should look at from the DMS side.
Yeah, I think it starts with the data for sure, making sure that it captures it. I think you see two flavors right now occurring in the market. DMSs are getting more sophisticated about storing unlimited pictures and the ability, I love that, that's great, storing unlimited pictures and also having this capability of syndication and being able to syndicate at different frequencies of time throughout the day, as well as now, and this kind of comes back to some of the reporting tools that would be announced. The BI tool is one scenario. The other is, can I get data out, can I export it, and can I schedule it, and can I actually deliver it somewhere else? Some of the tools are actually providing that capability as well automatically in the software. The other scenario that we see is a lot of the tools that get heavy into the sophistication and syndication to, let's say, Facebook, or if it's an Auto Trader, Cars.com, whatever it might be out in the world, wherever it's delivered, they are using merchandising tools that are made for pricing analytics, and this is where some true BI information comes in. Not only pricing, but buying analytics, how the car is priced against others in the market, is it merchandised correctly, how many pictures can I send to that source? And so we're seeing integrations occur there with some of those tools as well, and then it can be delivered out. So I think it's becoming readily available in pretty much, I would hope, most DMSs at this point, for sure. Does that answer your question?
So I get it from like the software perspective, but I guess for like dealers to understand like what it is, like what happens when you click a button.
Well, in a lot of cases, if a dealer, and this is hard because you try not to talk about how you do it, but if a dealer says, I want to syndicate my inventory to this service, that's pretty much it. They can individually take a car out, but the truth is the service is going to take over and it's going to deliver it at the frequency that's been required and asked with the information that they required it to be, and it's hands off. And it's pretty easy. It's actually kind of cool. I think, which raises a good question of, I think that systems are moving towards, I have just a moment, workflows. Everybody in here, I guarantee you, it's one thing I've learned having been in the business. I got in and said, hey, we'll develop a software package that works for dealerships, and find out that every dealership does something different. So what you find out is that every one of us has our own unique strategy and our own unique processes along the way. And finding that ability to configure those processes and adapt, and we call it workflows, but being able to create the workflow and then somehow finding repetitive workflows in your business and being able to automate those is a key to your success. And it's only going to get more visible as the future goes on. Anything else? I think, guys, we are about there. Unless there's other questions, I'd be more than happy to answer some more. But They may cut me off. I don't know. Mike might throw something at me too. Golly, I can't even walk across. I can't walk across there. Any others? Well, thank you guys. Appreciate you coming out.